All right, today pressure really ramped up on the Albanese government to go it alone and formally recognise a Palestinian state. Former Foreign Minister, this is the Hawke era, Gareth Evans, was out this morning calling for the recognition of Palestine as well as demanding sanctions on Israel.
And I think the most useful thing we can do in the present environment, certainly sending a strong message through sanctions would be important, but the most useful thing Australia can do right now is to turn into reality the recognition of Palestinian statehood and take the opportunity of this big summit that's happening in 2 weeks' time, in 3 weeks' time in the UN, to do just that.
We also had the former federal minister, Ed Husic, out there too, calling for Israel's ambassador to face a grilling over the escalation of Israel's action in Gaza. The Greens too lapping it up. New leader for the Greens, Larissa Waters, saying that the Prime Minister's recent criticisms of Israel are, quote, an encouraging sign. All the while, of course, Australia's Jewish community, they are warning these moves could embolden extremism and further alienate Jewish Australians. Greg Sheridan, foreign editor at The Australian, joins me. Well, I tell you what, Greg, so much for all the talk of unity and having an even-handed position on Israel. I am suggesting possibly to court the Jewish vote during the election campaign. I mean, this push inside Labor, how serious is it?
Well, Peter, great to be with you. It's a very serious push and I think very ill-advised. I don't think Labor did any good with the Jewish vote at the last election, but, you know, there's only about 120,000 Jews in Australia. So the truth is, in terms of sheer numbers, it's not that significant. Morally, it's profoundly significant. I think recognising Palestine as a state would be really counterproductive. It would be rewarding terrorism. Palestine doesn't satisfy the criteria for statehood, and everybody recognises that if there is to be a peaceful solution eventually between Israel and the Palestinians, it has to come at the end of negotiations. You can't put it at the start of negotiations. That's just ridiculous. And no one's going to enforce it. Neither should they, nor could they. The other thing is, Israel has very serious moral responsibilities in Gaza. And, you know, I say as someone who's for decades been a very strong supporter of Israel, you know, this current situation in Gaza can't continue, and the Israelis have to show us what comes next, and they have to provide proper food and all the rest for the people in Gaza. But it is the truth that the overwhelming moral responsibility for the terrible suffering of the people in Gaza rests with Hamas, and they could end that suffering today by releasing the Israeli hostages and laying down their weapons. So the moral outrage should be directed at Hamas first and foremost.
There's another fight going on too. This is a serious one inside the university sector. This regards the definition of anti-Semitism. And a pretty worrying sign, late this afternoon, the ANU, the Australian National University, led of course by former Liberal Foreign Minister Julie Bishop, it appears to be walking back its support for the definition that Australia's Jewish leaders support. Now, what's happening here, Greg?
Well, this is a very disturbing story, Peter. More disturbing really than what the government's doing. This is a sign of the rot and the degeneracy of our university culture. So the university has adopted a definition of anti-Semitism, which is very similar to the International Holocaust Remembrance Association definition. It is the standard definition of anti-Semitism, but it also says that while criticism of Israel is perfectly legitimate, there are elements of the way you talk about Israel which can be anti-Semitism. If you make Jews in any other country responsible for the actions of the Israeli government, that's anti-Semitism. If you criticise Israel in a wildly exaggerated way or, invoking classic tropes of conspiracy and so forth, that is anti-Semitism. This is a very, very reasonable definition of anti-Semitism, but the left and those people who hate Israel hate this definition because it links certain types of exaggerated hostility to Israel to anti-Semitism. And so they hate this definition. And I think for the ANU, we have witnessed a worldwide crisis of anti-Semitism and an Australian crisis of anti-Semitism, which the Albanese government has responded to very, very poorly. And if the universities now start to walk away from what is an entirely reasonable definition of anti-Semitism, that indicates a resumption of a very corrupt dynamic in Australia.
I'll leave it there. Thank you, Greg.